world building, character arcs, plot points, themes, tones. Long ago, these storytelling elements came together in harmony in one glorious show. Then, everything changed when Shyamalan adapted it. Only Netflix could bring the original creators together for a possible revival. But when the fans needed them most, they bailed. Years passed, then One Piece came out, proving that the network might actually know what they're doing. And although Netflix has a lot of great adaptations, they have a huge fan base in Avatar with some very high expectations. But I believe Netflix can pull it off. Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to the channel that was supposed to be the formal channel, which is up there. Hardly has any videos, but I swear there is one in the editing bay still. It's got lots of copyright blocks. Anyway, this is my first video in the series for Avatar: The Last Airbender, covering the 5 aspects of storytelling that are going to need to be focused on when doing a live-action adaptation. We're going to look at world building in this one, and I did have a 11-page script for this video, which I also had, I think, 2 or 3 versions of, but I've thrown that script away, so we're going off of memory and 1 measly page of notes. So bear with me, and if I forget stuff, I'm going to have to live with myself and that knowledge for the rest of my life. Let's go! In world building, there's 5 aspects that you want to really pay attention to for adaptation, and that is the geography, history, culture, magic system, and technology. And usually magic system and technology can be kind of interchanged if it's a science fiction or a fantasy, but in the case of Avatar, you have to do both because you've got, well, the magic system, but you also have this development of technology, especially within the Fire Nation. And we need to know what the capabilities are, as well as what their abilities are, you know, what they're doing, what they are, you know, what kind of machinery and stuff that we're seeing, versus the stuff that they would be capable of but haven't quite reached yet. Geography first, though. There's not a whole lot to say about geography. The show is pretty clear about, you know, the water tribes are based in the North and South Pole. We've got ocean and ice on both of these sides. We've got, with the Earth Kingdom, they're more spread out, but we see, you know, mountains, forests, living along rivers, and the ocean for trade because they're so big. The Fire Nation, we see very little of. The only time that we're actually in the Fire Nation is for Crescent Island, which is on a volcano. I know that in the animated series, we did have the Fortune Teller episode, which is at the base of a volcano, and that is a Earthbender tribe, whatever. It's a Earthbender town at the base of Mount Makapu. And we don't need that in this season. I think that it, you know, if anything, it can be a little confusing having another volcano with people living at the base of, but it's, you know, in the Earth Kingdom. For me, I like it because it shows the complexity of the civilizations that were developed for this particular story, but we don't need it. Also, we don't need the desert landscape. I know we all think that the Great Divide episode is not going to be in the live action adaptation, and rightfully so. It was kind of a throwaway episode. So save the desert landscape for season 2, where we have a lot of the desert landscape, especially with the library episodes and Appa being kidnapped episodes. News just recently came out that they're going to be cutting out the ticking clock of Sozin's Comet for the live-action adaptation. And there's a plus side and a negative side to this change. On the plus side, we can accommodate the very likely possibility that it's going to take a very long time to film all of these seasons. The actor who plays Aang was 12 when they started filming. He's 14 now, which means he's probably going to be around 15 when they start filming season 2. So he might be like 17 or 18 by the time we get to season 3. We're never going to believe that this was like a few months of time that passed for this actor. So I think that it's good to not lock down that it's going to take a certain amount of time, especially since we don't know how long it's going to take for them to develop these other seasons. Was that a negative or a positive? That was a positive. Okay. The other positive bit of this is that it's not super necessary for the first season that we know that Sozin's Comet is a thing. I mean, we can see it. Obviously, we see it in the trailer, so I'm guessing it's going to be in the prologue, but maybe not explained to the audience what it is. I think that's a good decision. Remember that it is a secret of the Fire Nation. It is something that they kept under wraps. So I don't think we need to actually know what it is until either the end of season 2 or the middle even of season 3. Like maybe put it in the middle of season 3 and then it like hyper speeds everything that happens after that. Like maybe it's the information that Zuko brings out of the Fire Nation when he joins the gang. Actually, that would be a really good way to get this information to the gang, is he's the one who knows. It's so top secret that only, the people in the Fire Nation know about it. There are other times when Roku didn't know about things that were happening in the real world from his spirit world presence. So he doesn't need to know about it, and he doesn't need to tell Aang about it. The big conflict by the end of season 1 is the Fire Nation's trying to capture the Avatar, because he's such a huge threat, and at the same time wipe out the Water Tribe. And this is mainly Admiral Zhao doing this. This is like his arc is he is obsessed with being the #1 general under Ozai. So I like the idea of him just being so ambitious and wanting to get Aang so badly that this is his thing. I'm going to be a legend for wiping out the Water Tribe and for capturing the Avatar, and that is the thing that is driving the plot forward. So Aang knows he has to master waterbending first and starts heading up towards the Northern Water Tribe, and he gets there and Zhang finds out that's where he is, and so Zhao, sorry. I don't know why I keep calling him Zhang, but it's Zhao, goes up to the Northern Water Tribe to try to capture him there, and it's this big battle that happens, and he's going to also wipe out the Water Tribe, and it's his big grand plan. So I think that's driving enough. Yes, it's not, I think that was my negative. It's not as intense, but I don't think there's any way around this. I honestly can't think of a way around this when you have your 12-year-old actor most likely going to be 17 or 18 by the time we get to season 3. It's not going to be believable, and it's not going to feel urgent if it's like, Sozin's Comet's coming, but it will be here in 5 years. That doesn't sound as urgent. It would be really hard to convey that to an audience that this is a ticking clock when it's 5 years away. Oh, also, I have a prediction here. So there is going to be some narration over the prologue, and I was trying to think whose voice would be the most appropriate for this. And I think just recently it was announced that they have cast the voice of Wan Shi-tong. So I think Wan Shi-tong is going to narrate the prologue of season 1. I think that would be perfect because this is a character who would have all the details of what happened, and it wouldn't be an odd thing. The only other alternative would be Roku, but Roku was dead, and there are times in the series when we saw that Roku wasn't aware of everything that had happened in the world in his absence. So I feel like Wan Shi-tong would be the one to know all of the details that nobody else knows about. At one point I thought it might be Ko, but Ko doesn't really make any narrative sense. Like there's no reason for Ko to narrate this. And definitely Gyatso wouldn't make sense because he dies. So another element of the world building are the combination animals. Now, in season 1, it seems to me that it wasn't quite clear about what they were going to do with the animals, because we do see regular, normal animals. Like we see the giant panda. Well, it's a giant panda that is Heibai. We also see the meadow mole that Uncle Iroh talks to. I swear, that's just a normal vole. Like, that's what that is. But combining animals is so important in this world because it's one of the things that makes it really unique from other fantasy worlds that we have seen. So I know that it's going to be extremely expensive and complicated to have every animal be a combination animal, but I'm expecting to see a huge amount of effort in portraying the world like this. The most important thing is that you're going to show the main creatures. So obviously Appa, who's a bison and a manatee, and definitely Catbus. And then you've got Momo, who is a lemur, and I believe a bat. Two of the more common combo animals that we see being used are the Komodo rhinos and the ostrich horses. Now, I did see in the trailer that we do have some ostrich horses, but I'm not going to feel like they have misrepresented the world if they decide to cut one of those creatures out or really minimize their presence on screen, because we really need to see that Appa looks good and Momo looks good and the bending looks good. And honestly, anytime that there's an important spiritual creature, that needs to look good too. And I'd rather they spend the budget on making those look good than have these more arbitrary creatures that are really just modes of transportation. And if they just want to replace them with people on foot like they are in Kyoshi Island, it doesn't look like there's any Komodo rhinos, I'd be fine with that. Spend your money on the important CGI effects like for Appa, Momo, and then of course we're going to obviously see Heibai and some of these other fantastical creatures, and then obviously the bending. Nyla, the Shearshu, looks fantastic in my opinion. I mean, this is a creature out of somebody's nightmare. I know that it's based off of a giant star-nosed mole or whatever, but having the toxic papillae, I think that's how you say it, on the tongue, this is like something from my nightmare. So I love the way that Nyla looks. Looking forward to seeing how well it interacts with the characters on screen. I was very pleased with this almost reptilian appearance of Heibai, who I believe was based off of at least the appearance of the spirit form of Heibai was supposed to be inspired by Evangelion's mass-produced Evas and maybe the fourth angel, which is the first one that we see in the original series. I think it's disturbing and I love it. I also love this otherworldly power that it seems to have with shooting light out of its mouth. I hope we see something so surreal with this creature, and it's not just this giant reptilian monster. Ko we have seen nothing of, but know that he has been cast, so I really can't wait to see Ko. Ko, I think, looks a lot like an omukade. I think that's how you say it, omukade. It's a type of a yokai, and I think we saw something like it in Inuyasha in one of the first episodes of the original Inuyasha show. But it's a real creature from Japanese folklore, and I think it's such a scary looking creature, so I can't wait. And just the presence of Ko is going to be fantastic. I hope. I really am looking forward to seeing Ko. And then, of course, the last spirit creature that we have is La, fusing with Aang and becoming what I understand online is called Koizilla. Definitely inspired by the Nightwalker from Princess Mononoke. That, I think, is going to be one of the trickiest things to animate or to bring to life, because it needs to have that creepiness. I'd almost love to see some inspiration coming directly from Princess Mononoke. I recall a specific scene when the Nightwalker stood up and it was just this silence over the forest. Like you didn't get this impression of like grandeur from the music. It just came from this creepy giant creature. Anyway, there's so much that can be done with Koizilla to make it look good, and so I'm curious to see what they're going to do, and I really hope that it works out. Oh, and I almost forgot, dragons. Yeah, we only see one dragon in season 1, and honestly, I think that they're gonna cut it out. I think that would be fine if they cut it out, because we're gonna have a lot of dragon in season 3 when we meet the two dragons who teach Zuko and Aang the source of firebending, and then we also have the flashback to Avatar Roku and Sozin's childhood and growing up, and the two of them having dragons. So I wouldn't mind if they cut Roku's dragon out of season 1. I think that would be fine. I think that maybe somebody telling Aang that he has to go to the temple to see Avatar Roku would be enough. You don't have to have it be the dragon coming to tell him. History. Okay, so I don't think that there's a whole lot of history that you need to include in season 1 that wasn't really in the prologue or in episodes like the Southern Air Temple and the Storm. Like outside of that, there's not a whole lot more information that we need in order to get to the end of season 1 and things all feel within context. Like we could get Sokka and Katara's backstories with their parents. We can get Aang and his running away story. We can get Zuko and his banishment story and the burning story. I actually think it wouldn't hurt to have Iroh's a little bit more of his backstory in season 1, which I don't think we really got a whole lot of in season 1, did we? No, that was in season 2 in Zuko alone when we heard Zuko's mother reading the letter from Iroh, saying his son has been killed in battle, and then Azula was like, oh, he's just given up because his son died. Please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's a free way to support the channel. Or if you're feeling really generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button. You can even leave me a one-time tip. Information is in the description and below. I have conflicted feelings about how to reveal the past in this narrative. So in the show, we had things given to us a piece at a time across 3 seasons. And I think that that's going to be I just really believe in this being a great way to keep us learning more about our characters rather than just how they behave in the present. I think it adds this feeling of richness to these characters that we're unfolding their past. Even as we feel we know them so well, we're finding out more about their history, and it's adding to the depth of the characters as we're going. In season 1, though, I think, okay, so we've got what is necessary to get us to the end of season 1. That's what we have to ask ourselves every time that we figure what are we going to reveal in season 1. And the second thing is what is going to be most important to explaining why our characters are the way that they are. So obviously we've got the doom of the air nomads. That's going to be important. We need Aang's runaway story. So that would be everything we saw in the storm. And honestly, everything we saw in Zuko's story in the storm as well. But there are things that we didn't get. And let's see, for Katara and Sokka, I don't know how important it is that we get that Katara's mother was killed in order to save her until later. But there's not really a problem with revealing it now, because then we can build up and understand her disdain for the Fire Nation and her desire for revenge. That'd be fine to reveal. But again, how much flashbacks do you want in the first season? That's going to be an awful lot. And I think it feels more natural to spread them out a little bit like we got in the animated series. Like, we didn't really find out what happened to Katara's mother until season 3 when Sokka tells the story to Zuko. That actually seemed like a pretty good place to explain it. But yeah, the one thing that I would say would make more of an impact to include earlier in the story, and I'm almost 100% sure that this is how it's going to happen. They're going to show Aang's story before we see him react to seeing Gyatso's body in the southern air temple. Because when you watch this show, if you're keeping in mind, like, okay, is this the first time I'm seeing this scene? Watching Aang react to Gyatso's body means less than it does after you find out that he abandoned the air nomads for his own fears. Like, he really feels like he abandoned them. And you don't have that sense of abandonment in that episode in the animated series until after you have seen the episode called The Storm. So moving it to before his freak out at seeing Gyatso's body, I think would be a good move. Another thing I think that they're going to do is they're going to have the details of Kyoshi facing Chin the Conqueror in the Kyoshi episode. I actually think that figure dropping down in what appears to be green and black outfit and doing airbending, I don't think it's going to be Avatar Kyoshi. I think that's going to be Aang dressed as Avatar Kyoshi. I think we're going to see him trying to get in touch with his past avatars there. I think that would be totally fine. Honestly, I'm not going to try to make predictions. There are so many things that you can do with an adaptation that will still work, just like there's so many things you could do with an adaptation that will absolutely not work. But yeah, doing the whole Avatar Day history where we learn about what happened between Kyoshi and Chin the Conqueror and her splitting Kyoshi Island off of the mainland, you could put that in the Warriors episode of the live action in season 1, and I think it would be fine. It would actually add some richness to this particular episode if you're going to spend a lot of time on Kyoshi Island. One other thing that I might like to have revealed a little bit sooner in the story is how the benders have certain times of day or certain elements around which they are stronger. We didn't get that revelation until like the final battle in season 1. And it might be nice to see maybe evidence of this earlier on. So when we get to that point at the Northern Water Tribe, we understand why Zhao had to halt his attack. We understand why he wanted to take out the moon. We understand why the battle between Zuko and Katara turns out the way that it does. So that's just, some foreshadowing leading up to that would be awesome. Yeah, because Katara basically says, I've always noticed that my waterbending is stronger at night. And we saw that at the end of season 1. She says that in season 3. But we noticed it at the end of season 1 when Zuko is like, you rise with the moon, I rise with the sun. It would be nice to see evidence of that before that moment, because it does feel a little bit like a last minute addition to the world building. Not too bad, but just a little bit. Culture. Obviously, East Asian influence. We're going to see that each of these different kingdoms has kind of a source of inspiration. We've got the Inuit influence for the Northern and Southern Water Tribes. We've got the Chinese influence for the Earth Kingdom. Where do we get the influence for the air nomads? I just keep thinking of the Himalayas. And for the Fire Nation, it seems to be more like a Japanese almost inspiration here. And even in the naming of the characters, it feels more Japanese than it does from the Earth Kingdom. So anyway, you want to obviously make that distinction. Also, there is a martial world sensibility here. Martial world would be like a wuxia. It's a genre of story in, I think it's a Chinese mythology and folk tales. It's basically this idea that that people have codes of honor among learning the martial arts, and that people interact through martial arts. It's such a complicated and extensive genre. I'm not going to try to define it here, but essentially, you're going to center a lot of your stories around martial arts, around learning them, developing your martial art, and competing against other people who represent usually other cultures and other styles of martial arts. So you're going to have a lot of those kinds of sensibilities. There's loyalty to your school, I suppose, or your culture in this case. And you're going to see that in this series as well. We want to make sure that that comes across. And I think the most obvious for season 1, and I really hope that they don't skip out on this one, is the sexism in the Water Tribe. Because this was actually a strong plot point in season 1, especially of the series, because we have Katara, who so badly wants to learn waterbending and goes on this long journey with Aang up to the Northern Water Tribe. And then when she gets there, she's not allowed to learn it. She has to learn the value of learning healing, which is the art that she's supposed to learn. But then she also fights a hopeless duel with Master Paku, which I adore. I really adore that she just wanted to fight him. And even though she knew she was going to lose, she was going to fight until she passed out. She was ready to keep going. But it was just a show of to me, it is an exemplification of who she is. She is so full of determination and hope and whatnot that even if it seems hopeless, she's still going to fight for it. I mean, how better could you demonstrate that than to have this little girl fighting a master of waterbending, knowing that she's going to lose, but she doesn't want to fight even though she is losing. I love that. I think it was fantastic. And it also creates some conflict for Aang, who went on this long journey with her, cares greatly about Katara in all senses, and doesn't want to leave her behind. And and then Katara has to make that sacrifice. No, you need to learn even if I can't. But then, of course, she goes and she fights anyway. But anyway, I hope that the sexism isn't left out of there, because it's also used as a vehicle for Sokka to develop as a leader, because he has to get over his prejudices and his filter of thought needs to be sort of broken so that way he can see situations more clearly and make wiser decisions about what to do in certain situations, which we saw demonstrated in the Jet episode when he goes and he warns the Fire Nation colony about the flood that Jet is going to cause. So anyway, that's all I've really got to say about the cultural aspects. Oh, another cultural aspect that we want to look at is filial piety. So this is distinct to East Asian. I didn't say it's distinct to East Asian culture, but it is a very important virtue in East Asian culture, is honoring your parents and being loyal to them and being somebody that they can be proud of. And that is so central to Zuko's story. I really love the way that it is shown. You don't have to ever explain any of these things or say any of these things exist, but just show that they are there. Show that Zuko will do anything to get back in his father's good graces, even though his father has been horrible to him his entire life. And remember that when Azula comes into the story, and I know that she's supposed to be in season 1, I hope just as a flashback, because I've explained that in the previous my previous video, but it's important there too because she talks about how father is ashamed of you and she uses that to manipulate him because she knows how important it is to him. And it's also a barrier between Zuko and Iroh because Zuko will not open up to Iroh as his father figure because he's not his father. And in his mind, the man who, the people who gave birth to me, those are my parents. Those are the ones that I need to be loyal to no matter what. You also kind of get a little bit of this role coming in with Sokka and Katara doing what their parents, taking on their parents' roles after their parents were gone. In Katara's case, when their mother died, and then in Sokka's case, when their father left to go fight the Fire Nation. But anyway, filial piety is what it's called, and you want to see this come through in the attitudes of the characters. Bear with me with this next segment. I messed up while I was doing my recording and got completely off topic and jumbled and neglected to mention several things, and I've added a few things in post, so just go with it. Another aspect of culture that I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing is how each of these kingdoms were sort of their societies were shaped. Their ways of living were shaped by the elements that are there, their own elements. Uncle Iroh described the frame within which I think that the writers started the world building when they created Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I'm just going to go ahead and play a little clip from him explaining the characteristics of the 4 kingdoms to Zuko when he's teaching him about how to redirect lightning.
Fire is the element of power. The people of the Fire Nation have desire and will, and the energy and drive to achieve what they want. Earth is the element of substance. The people of the Earth Kingdom are diverse and strong. They are persistent and enduring. Air is the element of freedom. The air nomads detached themselves from worldly concerns and found peace and freedom. Also, they apparently had pretty good senses of humor. Water is the element of change. The people of the Water Tribe are capable of adapting to many things. They have a deep sense of community and love that holds them together through anything.
Something that I neglected to mention when I recorded this video, and that's because I did not have my script in front of me, but I'm going to just quickly mention it without going too much into the details right now, is that we would want to see a distinction between the different cultures. The show did such a lovely job of building these cultures around their element characteristics. I'd like to see some evidence of that, especially with the Earth Kingdom, which is what we're going to see the most of. We see a lot of diversity, but in season 1, we see one major characteristic, and that is that within the walls of Omashu, the people inside are relatively free. They're happy, they're able to explore the arts, and I believe that the Mechanist is being moved to Omashu, so I think we're going to see, his inventions. He's allowed to flourish within the walls of Omashu. The Water Tribe, though, being a little bit more exposed and also having 100 years of almost half their tribe being wiped out, We want to see that they are very deeply entrenched in their traditions and their community. And that's what happens when they're the least technologically developed of the three. There was no real need for them to become more technologically developed because they had everything that they needed in abundance with their ability to manipulate water. So yes, we see that tradition and community is very important to them. With the Fire Nation, even though we don't see much of the inside of the Fire Nation, we will see evidence through the militaristic presence of Zuko and Zhao and anybody who is moving throughout the Earth Kingdom and the Water Tribes that is of the Fire Nation, that they're very militaristic. They are rigid. They stick to their rules and their structure. And this falls into the characteristics of learning how to be a firebender. And I'm just going to play a clip that we had of Zuko in season 3 apologizing to Toph for burning her feet. And it kind of explains where this mentality might have stemmed from.
I'm sorry for what I did to you. It was an accident. Fire can be dangerous and wild. So as a firebender, I need to be more careful and control my bending so I don't hurt people unintentionally.
So within the Fire Nation, we do see a lot of structure and order in it, a very adamant and rigid adherence to that structure and order. Something else I neglected to mention in this video is the psychology of war on people. So for 100 years, these people have been at war, whether it's the Fire Nation conducting that war, what happens to people when they are, constantly on the winning side. And especially in that episode, Prisoners, we saw that the Fire Nation soldiers became tyrannical. And then the psychology of the Water Tribe constantly being in this feeling of, we have been almost wiped out, and we're in very great danger of being wiped out again. Obviously, we get to the Northern Water Tribe and things are a little bit different, a little bit safer. The Earth Kingdom people, I don't know how much we're going to see of those Earth Kingdom villages that have been taken over by the Fire Nation. I'd love to see it, but I think it's going to take up a lot of time. I think that with Jet's episode, we're probably going to see more of it. But again, something that this show did that was really, really special was that it presented itself as a kids show, which would have a more it would adhere more to these archetypes of people, and instead of diving into, well, wait, sometimes the good guys, even when they are trying to do the good things, are not really the good guys, which would be Jet. Jet wants to liberate the Earth Kingdom or the villages in the Earth Kingdom, and he has become the bad guy, taking revenge on innocent people. And so that's something I really, really want to see more of in the live action adaptation. I think that is the thing that made this world special, is that it wasn't just a two-dimensional look at a fantastical world. It really did go to those places that give it that richness, that maturity of understanding of how people are in a real setting. And even though this is a fantastical setting, it's treated with respect as though it was real. Another aspect of culture that we're going to see is how civilizations and people were sort of built on the convenience of their element that they can manipulate. So air nomads, their temples are at the tops of mountains, or under a cliff edge, not easily accessible except by flying, except, like a one trail that goes up kind of a situation here. The earthbenders are very much protected by their gigantic walls, which is probably why they withstood the attack of the Fire Nation better than the Water Tribe. So the Southern Water Tribe took the biggest hit, probably because of its proximity to the Southern Air Temple, where Aang was known to have been born, or was at least rumored to have been born. We're definitely going to be seeing in Omashu that we have these chutes where mail is sent, or which is important. So the speed with which information is exchanged is very important to how well coordinated a group of people can be. And this is one way that Omashu has kind of developed quickly, at least within its own walls. We don't see a whole lot of Omashu talking to Ba Sing Se in the animated series. Maybe they will change that coming up. But if they do, I hope they'll have some unique way of doing that, something that's unique and possibly dependent on earthbending in some way. Maybe seismic telegraphing. That'd be cool. Like, you know, like they pound the earth and then they're able to pick it up, you know, at the next town, and like, you know, that would be so cool. Anyway, you know, like a telegraph, except it's with like a gigantic ass hammer that hits a stone or something and the vibrations are picked up at the next town. That'd be so cool. Okay. Anyway, I want a final note on the cultural aspects of this world. There is a culture of being under siege and being at war for a long time in the psychology of the people. You see it a lot in the Southern Water Tribe, where they're very distrusting of outsiders. And then, you have characters like Jet, who, somebody who has been on the receiving end of attacks for a long time might look at someone like Jet as a hero and be deceived by his passion and his charisma, but he's not doing the right thing. And for Sokka to be able to see through that is wonderful. So it's a wonderful character development moment for him. So I would love to see that, that we get an exploration of this kind of stuff, even if it's subtle, throughout the first season of the live action. It was such a wonderful part of the animated series in that it felt like it was exploring deeper concepts than just what was the main plot or what were each of these characters' main goals and the obstacles in their way. It was an exploration of world. Magic system, obviously bending, and I think with the bending, it's going to be about its escalation. The only escalation we really see in season 1 of the animated series is that water bending can lead to ice bending and ice manipulation, and then also healing, the healing arts. That is the only escalation in season 1 that we see. We don't really see any escalation with airbending at all because Aang is already a master and he doesn't need to learn it, so we don't have him exploring what airbending can do. We obviously see him do a bunch of really cool stuff, but with waterbending, that's really the only thing that we see get really big. I know that in the trailer and the posters that were released of Azula, people were like going, hey, where's her blue fire? We don't need to see that until season 2. Unless she's on the battlefield, even if she is in season 1, I'm fine with her not having developed that until season 2. Let's spread out this escalation just like we had it in the series, because then it feels like things are getting more intense and this world is becoming richer and richer as we go. That's a wonderful effect. Let's not lose that. I'm pretty sure we're going to see the difference in martial arts based on the elements, like waterbending was Tai Chi, airbending was Hungar, and was that Hungar? No, that was earthbending. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Having a different martial art style for each of the elements, I think, is so essential to the feel of why Aang needs to learn these different arts, that if you don't do it, it's gonna be like, well, he can already do something that looks just like waterbending, so why not just have him be able to do it right away? Make it look so distinct that we couldn't possibly look at a waterbender without the water manipulation and say anything other than that's a waterbender doing a waterbender move. One thing I would like to see explored, or at least hinted at more strongly, is that bending is stronger at certain times. In the end of season 1, we had this waterbenders are stronger at night, and it felt like it was almost thrown out there. I would love to have seen that we saw examples of Katara getting stuff better at night than she does in the daytime, or something like that. Just something to indicate a hint. And then when we get to the the Northern Water Tribe, and we have the attack on the Water Tribe, and this importance of the waterbenders are stronger at night. This is why we have to eliminate the moon. I would like to see that didn't feel like it came out of left field, that it was like we figured that out and now we're seeing somebody take the information that we have been aware of all this time and using it to their advantage. It's just more satisfying when you set something up like that and then have it be important later on. And with that, I want to talk about Heibai a little bit here. So something that's really unique to East Asian folklore is how the spirits have corporeal forms. And Heibai is one of them. And there's no real distinguishable rules about what they can or cannot do. I mean, when we see Heibai, it looks like one of the mass-produced angels or the fourth angel from Evangelion. It's just this alien, otherworldly sort of thing. I loved in the trailer, it looks like it's reptilian almost, and it shoots a beam of light out of its mouth. It's just so bizarre and otherworldly. I think that it would be great to keep the rules sort of vague. It will have this feeling of you can never fully understand what this creature is. So I'm hoping that we're going to see Heibai explored, not explicitly in this way, but we're going to see things and go, this is bizarre. Like, it's physically there and then it's not, and it shoots light out of its mouth. I want to see Heibai and feel like I'm looking at a creature that is both familiar and alien. I mean, it's reptilian. It's got 6 limbs and 2 of them don't quite seem right. Sometimes it's physically there. Sometimes it's physically not. It goes between dimensions. I just appreciate so much this otherworldly feeling of the spirit world, but still being able to interact with the physical world that our main characters are going to be in. So I'm hoping that that is going to be kept true in the series, in the live action adaptation. And of course, the spirit world. I was actually somewhat disappointed in what the spirit world looked like in the animated series, it being this kind of a swamp sort of a place. I would have liked something more vague and shifting, something that felt like it didn't really have rules, but at the same time feeling like a natural place. I would love to see a reinterpretation of the spirit world in the show, in the live action. I wouldn't mind that at all. I wouldn't mind it feeling like an alien world. We got more of that in Korra, I think, than we did in The Legend of Aang. But I think that's something that I would be open to seeing a totally new interpretation of, as long as it maintains that feeling of otherworldliness and mystery. We can never fully understand what it is. And Aang yet is supposed to go there and interact there and navigate this place. And the last aspect of world building to look at is technology. So it was a very interesting thing that they did with Avatar, where they decided that each of the different kingdoms is kind of at a different stage in development as far as technology is concerned, with the Fire Nation just being so far above and beyond everybody else, obviously because they have a limitless heat source, having this heat that they can use all the time. So that, manipulating metal and developing machinery, this is fantastic. The Earthbenders are pre-industrious, I would say, but on the cusp of taking that next step, but perhaps needing an alliance with the Fire Nation in order to get to that next level, which is kind of what we see happen in the Korra series. But we don't have a whole lot of exposure to Earth Kingdom technology, with the exception of the Mechanist developing gliders and the balloons. But he doesn't really use them much, except for, Sokka helping to figure out the rising and falling problem with the lid, etc. As far as the technology that we see, what are we capable of, what are we able to do, and what are we capable of doing? Eventually, by the end of the series, the Fire Nation is going to be capable of zeppelins and blimps, like the large airships, right? And we see in the end of season 1 that they also have these tanks, which are really interesting. They can flip over just like one of those RC cars, and then the cockpit will flip as well, so that your pilot or whoever's in there can always be upright. I don't think we need to see the tanks until season 2. I think season 1, keep it just their icebreaker ships and their giant, massive ships, because on the ocean, that to me is all we need to see of the Fire Nation's technology. For season 2, when we're going to be mostly in the Earth Kingdom, that's when we should do tanks. That's when we should have our giant drill at the wall, which will be, that will be quite an episode to have in the live action. It's the giant drill. I mean, what a set piece. And then for season 3, save the air balloons and the airships for that. I think that we should see that the air balloons exist in season 1. Like, I think we're going to. I think that in Omashu we're going to see the air balloons, but then between season 1 and season 2, Omashu gets captured. And so if we're an intelligent audience, we should assume that the Fire Nation has stolen the technology of the hot air balloon. Which will come back in season 3. But that's all I've got to say about the technology for the show. I think the only bit of advanced technology that we saw of the Water Tribe which really, I mean, we saw that they have a sort of a Venetian style city where they've got these water canals that go everywhere. And that's how they travel about. There's nothing I would say is particularly industrious about that. It's just making use of what they have and not really having a need for anything more. So anyway, I think that's all that we've got as far as technology goes. Yeah. Anyway, I'm finding it hard how to end this video, but that's what we did. I hope I definitely skipped some stuff. Like, I'm thinking of it as I am sitting here trying to end this video, but yeah, I'm just gonna have to live with that and move on, and I will see you for the next video. Be good to yourself.